I'm Rosie and welcome back to my channel. Ciabatta is one of those breads that looks super fancy with the huge air pockets, but I'll show you my insanely easy method for making foolproof sourdough ciabatta. My ciabatta has a delicate thin crust on the outside with a soft and chewy crumb on the inside. It's the perfect bread for sandwiches, dipping in soup, or simply eating with butter or cheese. Warning for you ciabatta purists out there, my recipe isn't for a super high hydration dough. The more water in the dough, the more big airy holes you get, but the dough is also more difficult to work with. My recipe has a moderate hydration level to keep it easy, but it's plenty holy for me. Let's get started. I'm going to start by measuring out 500 grams of bread flour. I highly recommend bread flour over all-purpose flour for this recipe. The higher gluten content in bread flour helps form those nice big air bubbles characteristic of ciabatta bread. Then I add 2 teaspoons of Himalayan pink salt, 2 tablespoons of olive oil, and 2 tablespoons of unfed starter straight from the fridge. I give that a good mix, and then I add 1.5 cups of room temperature water. By the way, I get lots of questions about why I use unfed cold starter. It'll be about 24 hours from the time I mix the dough to the time I bake it. This long fermentation time helps develop wonderful flavor and a strong gluten structure for that chewy, airy crumb with minimal effort. In order to prevent the dough from overproofing during this time, I want to slow down the fermentation. That's why I use a smaller amount of starter compared to most sourdough recipes, and my starter is cold and hasn't been fed in a few days, so it's less active. If you have more questions about my method, please let me know in the comments. I just mix until the dough comes together. You don't need to do any heavy kneading. Yep, it's still lumpy and bumpy, but remember, this is one of those ugly duckling doughs. It doesn't look great in the beginning, but I assure you that it'll blossom into a beautiful dough with some time. I'm going to let the dough rest for about 30 to 60 minutes and then come back to smooth out those clumps. It'll be much easier once the dough has had a chance to hydrate. In the meantime, I'm going to feed my starter. If you want to see how I made this starter from scratch with no discard and no weighing, I'll link that video in the description box below. For the rest of the day, I'm going to let the dough rise at room temperature, which is about 66 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit for me. Every 1 to 2 hours, I'm going to perform some gentle folds to help develop the gluten. Try to get in around 3 to 4 rounds of these folds during the day. The timing doesn't have to be exact. By the evening, the dough is ugly no more. It's smooth and elastic and has about doubled in volume. It's also nicely aerated, and you should be able to smell a light, pleasant sourness. For the final proof, I'm going to transfer the dough to a clean container coated with some olive oil. The oil will help the dough slide out of the container the next morning. I do my final proof overnight at room temperature. But if you live in a warm climate, you'll want to put your dough in the fridge for this step to prevent it from overproofing by the morning. Good night, little one. Sweet dreams. Okay, so this is probably the trickiest part of making ciabatta. Gently guide the dough onto the floured board. You want to avoid deflating all those air bubbles, so try not to grab it, but just slide it out. If you're going to make one huge ciabatta, you can actually slide the dough right onto your baking sheet and skip putting your dough onto a floured board. But I'm going to make one long ciabatta loaf and 4 smaller rolls today. The dough gets to rest for a few minutes while the oven comes up to temperature, but you don't need to let it rise again before baking. I want a softer crust today for my breakfast sandwiches, so I'm going to take my bread out once the crust is just lightly browned, after about 30 minutes. If you want a crunchier crust, let it bake for another 5 minutes or until the crust is brown to your liking. See how easy it is to make amazing sourdough ciabatta at home? I hope you give this recipe a try and let me know how you like to eat your ciabatta. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more easy baking and cooking videos, and say hi in the comments. Thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you next time. Bye!